Muscle moment for me was when I climbed Yosemite Falls. And I think the biggest thing for me, I broke down a few times on that and like, come on, just keep going. And I was like, I cried a few times, but that noise in my head that always tells me that I can't do something. And I realized that that noise actually was in my head a lot. And it was in that moment where I broke.
Welcome to Muscle Moments. A few years ago, I couldn't wipe my own ass, get in a shower, or walk myself into a store. Multiple surgeries had taken me apart, and what got me back wasn't a diet. It was strength I'd already built. I'm your host, Dana Wildeboer, and I am obsessed with helping people become the strongest, most capable versions of themselves. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I spent decades working my way to the C-suite in corporate. Those two things, coupled with my own health journey, proved to me that strength is the one thing that impacts everything. Your energy, your confidence, your independence, how you age, and how you show up. That's why I coach the way I coach, and the reason I started this podcast. But now that we're into it, I can't wait for you to hear why people who focus on strength and movement as a pillar of their life love it so much, and how it helps them break through their stories and achieve their dreams. It's raw, gritty, and unfiltered. I'm done watching people settle for small when what saves your life is strong. I'm singing it from the rooftops starting now. This is Muscle Moments. Let's get into it. Today's guest has spent 15 years in venture capital and startup innovation before doing something most people only dream about. She quit, bought a camper, and took a sabbatical. What started as a break became something much bigger, a full redesign of how she lives, works, and plays. She's now the founder of the Rewilding Collective, where she designs and facilitates nature-based experiences, retreats, and burnout workshops that help people quiet the noise, reset their nervous systems, and reconnect with themselves. She's a certified forest bathing guide. I actually did not know that until I wrote this intro. A strategic advisor with the Perkins School for the Blind Innovation Center, and the author of the newsletter Observations from the Wild. She's got strength through a trail. I got there through a barbell. I think you'll find we landed in the same place. Welcome to Muscle Moments, Dina Samra. How was that intro? Did I crush that? Did I miss anything?
You crushed it. Yeah, sounds perfect. I'm like, wow, that's me. You're
That is you. You're such a badass.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Super excited to have you here today. Really excited to share what you're doing at the Rewilding Collective with the audience here at Muscle Moments. We are on a mission to make strength sexy. And so I'd like to know from you, what is your definition of strength?
Yeah, I loved this question because I can only imagine the differences in answers that you're getting from all the guests.
Wide array. It's pretty awesome.
For me, I think it's funny when I hear the word strength, I immediately think of muscles, but actually I think it goes a little bit beyond that. For me, strength a lot has to do with just the perseverance, even in the face of difficulty and challenge. And so when you're persevering through a specific, like I said, challenge or difficulty that you're going through and you end up getting through to the end of it, that is like strength in my mind. And I think life in general will always be throwing things our way. And so how do we continue to persevere through all of the challenges that life has to offer? And then within that, it's also following your North Star and what lights you up, right? So even against the odds and when things are being thrown at you, how are you remaining steadfast in your conviction to what you're doing and following that joy and following the things that, again, light you up? I believe that there's immense strength in that. And for me, that's kind of the definition that I find. It's like perseverance, steadfast conviction. How are you continuing to push through even when something is hard?
Yes, I love this. You actually used perseverance and joy in the same sentence. And I was like, I don't usually hear the two of those together. So I'd love to dig in a little bit there. How does that connect for you?
Yeah, so when you persevere through something and you look back and you're like, wow, I did that, there is an immense sense of joy that can come from that. And it's
pride too, right?
You're developing, and you're developing this sense of like self-trust with yourself that you can actually do something. And I think that there's an inherent joy that can arise from that, and beauty that you can look back and see the everything that you've been through. And I think we a lot of the times don't have that kind of hindsight view to look back and review everything that we've done. But when we've persevered through things and we're able to celebrate those wins, there is a joy that arises from that. And so that's really where the connection lies for me.
I know I get a lot of joy when I celebrate my wins, right? Even if it's just like a little dance right
And
here.
like sometimes we forget, and I think that, yeah, totally. Like even as you were reading my bio, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize it. So so I think that joy is definitely synonymous with strength.
Definitely. I can relate it from a physical strength perspective for sure. I'm sure you can just from your own activities, but like you've got to persevere through whatever is on that bar for that workout to achieve whatever comes next. Maybe it's the next workout, maybe it's a rest day, whatever it is. But like you have to be steadfast in your conviction with that barbell to complete that series of exercises. And I mean, it kind of teaches you the same thing because then at the end of it, you're like, all right, I did it, or that didn't go as well as I wanted. Let me reflect on it. But there's like infinite opportunities to reflect on what is happening as you are building physical strength too.
Yeah, and even if you fail, even though I don't believe in failure, like if things don't work out the way that they were planned, you always will learn from it, and that in and of itself also can build strength, right? So whether you're learning or whether you keep iterating and you keep changing things up, like there is strength in that, and there's strength in admitting like, oh, that didn't go as I planned, and that's okay. Like how are we going to be better next time, So there's a learning that you can take from that, I think, and that in and of itself also can build strength.
I'd like to look at the Rewilding Collective, a group of people who get together to change the way they see the world, the way they think, the way they show up using nature. What does it mean to rewild your life?
Rewilding actually comes from a real ecological term. So when a species or a plant gets removed from an ecosystem, sometimes forcibly, the whole system starts to lose its balance. And so rewilding is actually the process of like loosing that plant or species back into the ecosystem in order to kind of bring the balance back, and often ends up having a ripple effect on the ecosystem where the ecosystem ends up thriving and being, even better than it was before. And so an example that I like to use in nature, there's a really famous kind of rewilding story around the rewilding of Yellowstone wolves. I don't know if you've heard about this at all, but essentially the wolves in Yellowstone were gone for almost 70 years. And without them, the elk actually had no predator. And so when the elk doesn't have predators, that means that they overgraze, especially near the rivers, and then it actually causes a lot of detriment to like the soil and the plants and the species, and so the pollinators stopped coming, and the beavers stopped coming in the rivers, and it was like this whole ripple effect just because the wolves were removed. And so essentially what they did is they decided to reintroduce the wolves back in the 90s, and they just changed one pattern when they did that, because the elk actually stopped camping out by the rivers because it wasn't safe anymore, and that gave the trees room to actually grow back. The beavers then ended up coming back because they finally had material to build with, and the beaver dams actually ended up reshaping the rivers, and then in turn birds, fish, and otters all came back. And so when you're looking at this from a macro perspective, it's like one species with one change actually ended up bringing the whole ecosystem back into its rhythm. And so that's how I think about the rewilding aspect, about like rewilding ourselves and rewilding our lives, because we're all very conditioned for hustle, right? We've learned that our worth is tied to our job type or a bigger salary, how much we produce. And, before that, we had actually joy, and we had play, and we had creativity, and we had space to reflect. And somewhere along the way, those things got pushed out in order to make room for achievement. And so rewilding is introducing them back into the system, introducing, not necessarily adding something new, but bringing something back to what was already there. And so just like in Yellowstone, when you reintroduce it, it doesn't stay contained. Your own ecosystem actually starts to thrive again, and it creates a ripple effect. You show up differently at work, you show up differently with your family, you show up differently for yourself. And so that is really what it means to rewild yourself. It's like bringing yourself back to the basics and back to the things that used to light you up, used to bring you joy, because again, we've kind of lost that along the way, I think, a lot of us. And nature is such a big part of the whole rewilding framework, because I believe that when we're in nature and when we spend time in nature, that is the best time that we're able to really quiet our minds and actually actually allow for the change to actually happen. And so nature is the through line, but it's like also part of the story as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, in your case, it seems like it's actually a big part of the story. And so we know you spent 15 years in venture capital and startup innovation. Let's talk about the pivot. Which pivot did you make, and how did movement carry you through it?
Yeah, so the pivot, going back to like our perseverance, I think the
Yeah.
pivot took a lot of perseverance and a lot of persistence. At first, taking a step away from something that was stable and deciding to take a year off with no income coming in and just taking a risk on it was probably the biggest thing I've ever done in my life. But the persistence and perseverance that I knew that there was something better for me, or I felt like the situation that I was in my job at the time in that corporate landscape, it wasn't lighting me up. It wasn't bringing me joy, and I knew it had something had to change, but I didn't really know what yet. And so it was the persistence in that feeling that something needed to change, and that walking away from something that was very stable was the best thing I could think of at the time of like, how do I figure this out? And so throughout that whole experience, being able to regulate my nervous system was really important. And so it's super easy to obviously let fear come in and tell you that you're not good enough or that you can't do it. And so for me, a lot of it, like the way that I was able to regulate my nervous system through it was through movement. Like movement was the biggest cornerstone of not just regulating my nervous system, but also a core component of how I help others regulate. Because when we move with our bodies, we're, again, like I said, able to quiet that overstimulated mind and come into flow with ourselves, which in these times of when things are changing and when there's a pivot happening, those moments of clarity around to get clarity around the decisions that need to be made is so important. And movement has such an amazing way of being able to do that. So it was instrumental to keeping me sane, honestly, throughout all of
Yeah,
it.
and so what I'm hearing you say is like movement was a part of you getting and staying curious about what would give you joy since you were feeling completely depleted of joy in the
Yep.
corporate environment here. I'm super interested. What's your preferred type of movement? Like the world
Yeah.
knows I like to lift weights. What does Dina love to do?
Yeah, so it's been a journey because I've gone through many iterations of like I need to go to the gym and like the negative self-talk that I used to have around not going to the gym, and when I went to the gym I never felt really great about it, and so I realized that I needed to find what works for me because everyone is different, and we can talk a little bit about that later when we talk about how I work with others. But I think for me it was discovering what that was, and I happened to discover it when I was climbing mountains, and I decided we took a sabbatical, me and my husband. And so traveled around the US. We bought a camper, like you said. And so we basically just pinpointed all the different national parks we wanted to go to. And that was our route. And then obviously when you're at the national parks, you have no other choice but to go on these amazing hikes, right? Because
Either that or you're just going to stay in the camper the whole
yeah,
time. So
yeah, it just naturally started to happen. And every hike that I did, we got more intense and more slowly started to see my strength come back because I'd been sitting in front of a laptop every day for 15 years, like I didn't really have movement in my body or in my life. And so yeah, hiking, climbing mountains, being outdoors, any sort of movement in nature for me is what I find works best for my body. And it's like what allows me to actually continue to persist and persevere in those moments when sometimes movement can be difficult.
building on that, I'd love to hear you're using movement, you're going on these incredible hikes, you're on in nature. And it sounds like even before we got into the camper, there was a period of time where movement, like you just were using it in general, right?
Mhm.
So as you were getting more comfortable bringing movement back into your life, you started to feel the connection between movement and decision making. What series of ahas did you have where you're like, oh shit, this is something we got to tell people about?
Yeah, I think it was in those moments where again I tend to be the type of person, especially coming from that hustle culture mindset, where my brain feels like it's always on overdrive, and that's how it's kind of been hardwired, and that's what my whole life it was told. And I was living in New York City, like I was very much in it, I was in the system. I was really, and I felt like the only way that I could be a productive human being is by hustling and by climbing the corporate ladder and by getting a better promotion and more money and more jobs. And I think that naturally puts your system in overdrive. And
For
so
sure.
for me, my system was totally running on overdrive. And even though I knew there were certain elements of my intuition and my gut that I could hear at times, most of the time that clarity and that connection that I had with my body and myself was not there. It was extremely
Mm.
disconnected. And so when I started to move, I started to notice that those decisions and answers that I had to all these really big questions in my life just started to naturally come out. And
Or like, did you find like you got ideas and you're like, oh, that's
yeah,
interesting. And since you were already in a curious space and your energy was already in motion because you were moving, like you
yes,
could roll with the idea
yes.
better than it just being like, oh, whoa, whoa, that came out of left field.
Yeah, no, it made me more creative. Like I
Mhm.
100% saw that like being in movement and my moving my body somehow opened up these different creative channels that I never really knew I had. Like
Mhm.
I started to learn, I mean, I started to connect with myself around also just the things that I enjoyed doing. Like it was like, I don't know what I enjoy doing. Let me go for a walk and think about that. And then I would like go for a walk and I would think about
Yes.
it and I'd look at the birds and I'd look at the trees and I'd listen to the sounds of the river and like all of a sudden I'd be like, oh, I love to paint. Oh, I haven't painted since I was a kid and I completely forgot that I love to do that and like let me go do that. And so it was kind of like whenever I had a question, I would just go out into nature and move my body and somehow the answers would come. Like it's really incredible how with intention, a lot of the things that you are thinking about and noodling on, like the answers are all there. It's just a matter of quieting it enough to be able to hear what's being said.
I mean, coaches, therapists, mentors, they're always, and I'm sure you heard it too in many facets, but for me, they're like, you already know the answer. You already know. And I'm like, do I? Do I? And then I remember when I had a very similar aha, I was just so super stressed out. And I was like, I just need to go for a walk. So I left my apartment in Austin and I went for a walk with my dog. And all of a sudden I was like, I hear birds chirping. And
Uh,
then I was like, oh, so I had a very, even though movement in different capacities has been a part of my life for years, it was a walk when
mhm.
I was first. And I told my coach at the time about it, and she was like, yes, this is it. You're getting it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. You build spaces where people reconnect with their bodies. And from a somatic sense, what do you think strength means in
Hmm.
that perspective?
Yeah. So the way that I typically will work with people around not just reconnecting with their bodies, but it's really reconnecting with their souls and their spirit, right? It's what is it that me as a human needs in order to thrive. And so that's what I like to try and guide people and get people curious about asking those types of questions. So the way that I like to look at it is there's so many different paths that we can take to regulate our nervous system. One of those and one of the most important and a core fundamental part of my framework is movement. And what I love to do is really encourage people to figure out exactly what type of movement works for them. I found personally that going to the gym wasn't for me. And unfortunately, for many, many years, that put me off from moving my body completely because I didn't look the same way as all the other people. And I'm sure you know about a lot about this, but the people that go to the gym and the way they look, it almost felt like it just was fake and it wasn't real. And so I just never really resonated with a community that was a part of a gym. But again, that was just me. I know that not all gyms are
You
created
are not alone.
and
You are not alone. I'm
yeah.
not offended, but I am like, come to the gym with me. It's
Yeah.
gonna be the most welcoming experience you've ever had.
Well, I've heard like CrossFit is like a very
Yeah.
welcoming community. Like I know that
Yeah.
there are definitely way more open and
Yeah.
welcome communities, but I never really experienced that. And so
Totally.
the way that really, when you connect with yourself, connect with your body from a somatic perspective, it's really understanding what works for you because it's not a one size fits all, and it's not like a copy paste. Like for
Yep.
me, climbing mountains and hiking, that's what works. That's how I
Yeah.
found joy in moving is by doing that. So I encourage people mostly to go on a little bit of a discovery mission on find what works best for their body. It could be dancing at a concert for 5 hours. It could be walking in nature. It could be yoga and Pilates. It could be physical training. Like I don't really care what it is. It's just a matter of like, what is it that, how does it work for you? Like what works best for you? And yeah, to find it and have joy in like exploring that. That
So you,
really in turn will regulate your nervous system from a somatic perspective.
oh yes, movement and joy, two secret weapons that I
Yeah.
keep in my arsenal all the time now. So especially being on the other side of burnout myself,
Yeah.
having a lot of the same realizations that you did, I'm like, no, I'm holding on tight to these ones,
Yeah.
actually.
Totally.
You actually do a breadth of different things. You've come through your own transformation. We have the Rewilding Collective. You're working with people to get comfortable with themselves, reconnect with themselves, but you're also working with organizations and
Mhm.
doing events of your own. Like, what is the
Yeah.
world of Dina full of these
So
days?
it's an ever evolving thing, and that's what I've learned is that life has impermanence is hardwired into the system, and so there's
I mean, yeah, we're all gonna die, right?
yeah, like we're always going to be, there's always going to be something new. And so for now, what I'm trying to explore and what I get the most excited about is trying to encourage people who are in that hustle culture mindset to take a breath, to take a pause, and to be able to reset. And so I do that from a number of different ways. Like I work with corporations to develop wellness and like well-being, I guess, like experiences for their communities and employees. I do that through retreats. So mostly nature immersions and nature retreats, as well as burnout workshops. So I
Mhm.
recently worked with a company, I'm allowed to say, they contracted me to come in and speak to their women's sales ERG. And they have a problem with out, and the women in the sales organizations in general tend to be really hardworking. And obviously, like anyone in a sales function it can be an extremely kind of daunting, very difficult role to
Yeah.
be in. And so we're speaking with them and working with corporates and their employees around how can you best find the right types of tools to regulate your nervous system in order to be able to become a better like to show up as a better version of yourself in your work, in your life. I think that resonates with a lot of corporations and just employees in general who find themselves in that. So been exploring a lot of that type of stuff. But then yeah, I do also my own events, typically right now in the Northeast, and the events range from nature walks, forest bathing, all the way to sound healing, to cold plunge and sauna experiences. It's really anything that you can think of that allows for us to quiet our overstimulated minds and come together in community, because I believe that community can be medicine and that we all are in the same boat with a lot of these kinds of things. So how can we rely on each other and learn from each other and come together and actually, yeah, just do it together, because you can't do it isolated. That's not going to help you feel better about your, you
I
know?
mean, community is a pillar of health, right? Like it's one
Yeah.
of the five pillars that I teach in my own practice, but it's also been scientifically researched. People who have deep connections, even if it's with only one other person,
Hmm.
experience far less loneliness and much more satisfaction in life than people that are not able to connect. When I'm working with people, I'm always like, okay, so like you had coffee with a friend this week, right? Or like you did your extra day of cardio walking with a friend, right? Like you had
Yeah.
someone else to talk to. Even like most of my friends, we've been all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Like literally, I'm blessed to have a global set of friends, but I hardly get to see them. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to call you while I'm doing
Yeah.
this walk,
Yeah.
right? Like that counts too.
Totally. Yeah. Community is medicine. I really believe that. So if we can come together and regulate our nervous systems together and have fun doing it, I think there's magic in that. And so that's really the goal of the Rewilding Collective, is to create those conditions in which people can do that. And so it's been fun. It's been fun to explore what works and what people love, but I'm sure ask me again in 6 months, it might be different.
Well, I'd love to hear what's it like for you to do something that feels fun. I can tell you have fully embodied this. It is fun. You're expressing joy. What's that like for you now? It's new,
It's
okay?
new, but I know exactly what it looks like and what it feels like, so I don't think I can ever be like go back to that other world and that other life. Like I've definitely closed a chapter on a big part of myself, and it was really hard to walk away from the title and the job and all that stuff. And I hope I never have to work for a large corporate unless it's a well, you know, it's a good
It's
one.
like the perfect gig. Some of those exist,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And I'm building essentially right now, not just with the Rewilding Collective, I'm trying to really build a portfolio career where I'm able to take on a bunch of different projects and a bunch of different things while also scaling and building rewilding as a way of, like, I realize I'm a multifaceted individual and I don't like to just do one thing. And so when you
Yes.
talk about joy, like that was something I uncovered in my sabbatical, because I kept asking myself, like, what brings you joy? What brings you joy? And it's like I learned a lot about myself when I gave myself that time and space to actually breathe. And that's why I created the Rewilding Collective, because I know the power of what can actually happen when we give ourselves the time to breathe, because I did it myself. And now I'm living my life, and even though I'm trying to figure things out day by day, like I don't have the answers to anything, I know what brings me joy. And so that's what I try and follow. Yeah.
We have another guest on who has a similar story, but now on the other side, very much feels aligned here, where it's like so grateful for that experience. I would not have the courage, the knowledge, the wherewithal to take this leap. But now that I'm on the other side of it, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
actually also love being a multifaceted person.
Yeah.
And most of my recovery was spent sleeping, honestly.
But that's what your body needed. That's good.
That is
Yeah.
100% what I
Yeah.
needed. Absolutely. The way
Totally.
I feel now is like I can actually feel the alertness of
Yeah.
the. I forget where I was going with this, but
No,
that's okay. It
I'm so
happens all the
happy that
time.
we've both managed to like take a step in the right direction,
Oh,
you know?
yeah, this is where I was going with it. Is like I don't want people to have to feel like that they have to leave their job
Yeah.
that currently feels like it's a slog, right?
Mm,
Like I understand that's not reasonable for most people, and some people just don't want to, right?
yeah.
Like they're just not interested, and that
Yeah.
is totally okay. So in your community, you bring together a lot of professionals to your events, right? How have they been processing? What tools are they learning that they get to bring back, right? How are you
Yeah. I
spreading
think
the
like
vibe?
boundaries has been
Okay.
the biggest thing that I'm trying to teach people who are still in their jobs or still want to be in their jobs. And I'm not saying like not to work for a large corporate. I think the nuance is like there's a difference between working for a company where your energy is being negatively drained versus a company where your energy is like being filled up. And I think there are instances and organizations and functions that tend to have more of an effect than those that are negatively draining. And so I just want people to bring awareness to what situation they're in, right? Because yes, I'm not asking you to quit your job. I'm just asking you to bring, are you burnt out? Are you feeling it's a toxic environment for any way, shape, or form? Like that, those are scenarios in which I will tell people to quit their jobs. Like I will tell people to go find better situations. And that doesn't mean going and being an entrepreneur. It just means going and finding something else that doesn't tax you in that way, you know? And so I think that's the difference is, okay, yeah, you're in a job, but it's mentally draining. That's probably not an environment you should be continuing to stay in. And I think a lot of people do just make excuses and stay because for a number of reasons, I also made excuses. It's like, oh, I need the job. I need the income. I need stability. Like, you know, you make a million and one things. It's like, what's this going to look like on my resume if I leave? Like, there's so many things, but that's like the fear talking. You know, that's not the joy talking. And so it's like, quiet your mind enough to hear what the joy is trying to tell you because that is the breadcrumb to follow.
Yes, boundaries are
And
definitely a
boundaries.
good way
The
to create
boundaries.
space so that you can
Mhm.
allow yourself to be curious,
Yeah,
turn your brain off, even if it's only for 10 minutes, right?
exactly.
Just like set a
Exactly.
timer if you have to, but
Yeah.
like give
And like
yourself the chance to get to 30,000 feet so you can see it all playing out.
exactly. And the only way you can do that is by setting the right types of boundaries with work. And if you're working crazy hours and it's like nonstop from 6 a.m. until 12 o'clock at night, like I've worked in companies where that's been the case, you know, and it's like you're in it, you're so in it that you don't even have a chance to breathe, you know? So I think setting the right types of boundaries in those instances can help give a lot of clarity.
As we get ready to wrap up here, I'm asking all the guests the same question, a muscle moment, a time a movement taught you or someone in your community something bigger than the exercise itself.
A muscle moment for me was when I climbed Yosemite Falls. I never thought I could get atop of that waterfall. It is the tallest waterfall in North America,
Yes.
for those who don't know. And I think the biggest thing for me, I broke down a few times on that. And like my husband was there.
Oh,
He's the only one that was like, "Come on, just keep going." And I was like, I cried a few times, but I think that was the moment where I was able to really persevere and push through that noise in my head that always tells me that I can't do something. And I realized that that noise actually was in my head a lot. And it was in that moment where I broke through and I was like, oh, like if I can do this, I can do anything, you know? And
yes, that's the one.
that's the muscle moment that I would leave, just push through, keep pushing, you know?
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
And what did the views look like up there?
Oh my God, it was incredible. I was so tired though. I couldn't get me off this mountain, but it was amazing. It was incredible. The way down was even harder than the way up,
Oh,
honestly.
for sure, because you're just through the
Yeah.
roof for however
Yeah.
long. Yeah. I mean, I also cry on the side of mountains, but I still love to go to the top. I
Yeah.
want the views, right? Like I
Yeah.
want the experience, but it's
Totally.
also stressful for my husband.
Yes.
I'd love to give you the opportunity to share any practical advice or anything that you didn't get to share that you would like to make sure the audience hears.
Yeah, I think just get curious. Get curious about what works for your body and have fun with it. Like, try this thing out, try that thing out. You know, is it Pilates? Is it, like I said, there's so many different things that you can do to move your body and find out what works for you, but also fall in love with the journey of that curiosity and the journey of figuring out what that is for yourself, because you're going to be developing a deeper connection with yourself in that way. And I think that is the best thing that anyone can do in order to be able to lead better life and come from that place of joy. So get curious about what works, because yeah, it's fun to explore.
It is fun to explore, and it's not easy. It's really hard. Early in the conversation, you were talking about play as a
Mhm.
mechanism, and sometimes getting curious and or play can be a very courageous act
Mm,
for a person. So, how would you recommend someone insert play into their life? Because let's be real, 30, 40 something
yeah.
year olds who've been in their career for 20 years, I know I didn't remember how to play for the longest time.
Yeah. I started by making a list of all the things that I used to do as a kid that I used to love to do. And it was everything from making and collecting stickers all the way to paint by numbers to singing in a band to, again, all these things. I just started by making a list, and then I decided to choose one thing from that list that I would try out or do something again. And that's what started. And then it's like momentum. You build it kind of like a ripple effect, and you want more of it. You're like, oh, that was awesome. Like, let me try this one now. Let me try that one. And so
It's just nice to like if you feel your brain doing
yeah,
something different, right?
yeah, exactly. And it's also not something different. It's something that is inherently you. Because
Oh, very true.
when you used to do it as a kid, like that is when you were unapologetically who you are. And so it's kind of reminding people to go back to that, because yeah, that's where the joy was.
The last question that I have for you in today's conversation is inspired by Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, where he asks all of his guests to leave a question for the next guest. So
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing. The
Yeah.
question that was left for you, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
Sushi. 100%.
Ooh,
I know
love.
sushi. I would eat it every day if I was on a deserted island. That's all I would want. I don't get bored of it, and I think that it's just so healthy too in its own way. So like, yeah, sushi, hands down, all day long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sushi. I love it. Hey, friends. Thanks for listening to this episode of Muscle Moments. I hope you enjoyed it. This is just your quick reminder that any advice or information that has been shared on this episode is for entertainment purposes only. This is not medical advice from a healthcare provider. These are conversations with me and my friends about why strength is awesome. If you have questions about what your body is experiencing, make sure you find the coach or practitioner that's right for you. If you want to learn more about Will to Fit coaching, you can find the link in the bio.